Good morning, Kenya. Rise and shine to the morning momentum. Your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines. It is the 23rd day of January 2026. This is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. Use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Younib Media TV at Alphonce Albakwekwe. My name is Alphonce Ouma. Let's take a look at the top stories on the Daily Nation this morning. On the front page, Ruto'S many headaches. Now, fight back. President's allies have downplayed the crisis, saying broad-based government has got it all figured out. At a glance, hostile court orders, delicate pre-election coalition talks with ODM, internal UDA disputes linked to party polls, behind scheduled disbursement to counties, looming drought, and growing resistance to sale of state farms are among the many headaches that the president is facing, according to the Nation this morning. President Ruto is lurching from one crisis to another as he begins the final full year in office ahead of polls in August next year. How he navigates the challenges to reignite the populism that swept him to power likely to influence his re-election strategy. That story is augmented for you on page 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 3, it's a sad morning. Couples, 3 children killed in car crash, days to U.S. return. Now, what was to be a joyful moment for a U.S.-based family visiting a children's home they are supporting in Bungoma County turned out to be an immense tragedy on the night of January 4th. Miss Wangui Ndirangu, who was born in Kenya and later relocated to the U.S., was traveling to Bungoma with her American husband, Christopher Winklepeck, and 3 children, Njeri, 16 years, Emmanuel, 13 years, and Cairo, 6 years. Then the unexpected happened. That story is augmented for you on page 3. On page 8 this morning, the Judicial Service Commission nominates 15 Court of Appeal judges. And on page 2, in the health sector, patients decry SHA surgery approval delays, costly rule. A knee surgery request has turned into a 2-week wait for Maureen Wendo and her family, despite her doctor's approval and a confirmed surgery date. The Social Health Authority has another condition. That story is augmented for you on page 2. Let's get up close and candid with the Nation. We start with that story of SHA. Now, patients face surgery delays over late SHA authorization. It's a state of crisis. The Ministry of Health has urged SHA to address delays, ensuring timely access to essential care. SHA has repeatedly failed to respond to pre-authorization requests, leaving patients' surgeries stalled and uncertain. You want to catch up with that story on page 2. On page 3 this morning, how a couple lost all 3 children in crash 2 days before U.S. return. The funeral service will be held at ICC Mombasa Road, following by cremation at Kariakoo. What was meant to be a joyful family visit to a children's home in Bungoma ended in an unimaginable tragedy. Now, Miss Wangui Ndirangu, who was born in Kenya and later relocated to the U.S., was traveling to Bungoma with her American husband, Christopher Winklepeck, and 3 children. Now, the family's van was hit by a lorry, Mr. Kai said. Miss Wangui has been supporting the children's home in Bungoma, and she had made a tradition of visiting the home before returning to the U.S. whenever she was in Kenya. You want to catch up with that story on page 3. Now, also on page 3 this morning, French tourist dies in paragliding accident in Elgeyo Marakwet. A French tourist died following a paragliding accident near Iten town along the scenic Elgeyo Marakwet escarpments, officials said yesterday. The victim, 49-year-old Maud Binaud, arrived in Kenya on January 17, 2026, and was scheduled to leave at the end of the month. Now, on page 3 and on page 4 and page 5 rather this morning, internal disputes, Ruto'S mounting troubles. President lurches from one crisis to another. Now, within the ruling party, the United Democratic Alliance Party leader faces another headache after initial party grassroots elections conducted across 42 counties were cancelled following complaints. As the country faces mounting economic pressures, looming drought, public sector unrest, and critical political battles less than 2 years before the elections, President Ruto confronts a defining moment that will test his leadership, shape his legacy, and determine the future stability and prosperity of the nation. You want to catch up with that story on page 4 and page 5 of The Nation this morning. Let's take a look at page 6. Ruto'S 21-member advisory team illegal, court declares. Petitioners said the advisor positions had created a kitchen cabinet and were used to reward political loyalty. President reneged on pledge to cut numbers after 2024 youth protests and named even more. The recurrent expenditure for the advisory unit in million shillings. We take a look at that from 2022-2023 financial year. The headquarters was allocated 267.36 million shillings. In 2023-2024, the headquarters was allocated 310.43 million shillings. 2024-2025, 143.11 million shillings, and 2025-2026, 146.04 million shillings. Now, you have that distributed across different sectors, that is pay and parks, hospitality, travel, and other expenses. So the total for financial year 2022-2023 stands at 267.36. For 2023-2024 financial year, it is 1.12 1,120,000 shillings, and on 2024-2025 it is 567.5 million shillings. 2025-2026 478.74 million shillings, and 2026-2027 580.26 million shillings. On page 7 this morning, 10-point agenda takes center stage in push for ODM UDA coalition. Now, team to assess a memorandum of agreement or an implementation progress set to start public engagement. Supporters of the broad-based government arrangement say most of the items have been implemented. You want to catch up with that story on page 7. Let's take a look at page 8. Judicial Service Commission names 15 new Court of Appeal judges. Vacancies were advertised, citizens invited to submit memoranda, and candidates interviewed openly. Reforms expected to shape jurisprudence and public trust nationwide. Increase to reduce backlog of cases, and the statistic stands at 42, which is the total number of Court of Appeal judges once President William Ruto formally appoints the individuals whose names he has received from the Judicial Service Commission. That story is augmented for you on page 8. On page 10 this morning, no fees, uniforms needed for admission to grade 10. Ruto says state has disbursed 44 billion shillings to learning institutions. Directive comes amid fears that many of the 1.13 million learners are yet to report to school. You want to catch up with that story on page 10 of The Nation. Now, on page 12, billionaire attack facing endless legal battles in Kenya. Now, businessman says charges are politically motivated and malicious. Judge faulted manner the case was initiated, transfer between courts, and the conduct of investigators. You want to catch up with that story on page 12. Let's take a look at the important dates, years, and amounts. Now, 18 is the number of companies under the ELSEC group. 2008 is the year the Turkish investor Osman Ednik Elsek arrived in Kenya and he settled in Kilifi County. That same year, 7.6 million shillings was accused of defrauding Camille Construction Company of Mogadishu. The case was later settled out of court. In 2016, Mr. Elsek was first taken to court in Kenya, and 2022 is the year prosecutors say the businessman and his associate interfered with witnesses. 13th is the date this month Mr. Elsek was arrested by the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit. You want to catch up with that story on page 12. All right. Also on page 12 this morning, court clears DJ Brownskin over wife's viral suicide video. A DJ charged with failing to prevent his wife from killing herself in Nairobi 4 years ago has been cleared of any wrongdoing. Acquitting Mr. Michael Mashari Anjiri, aka DJ Brownskin, Senior Principal Magistrate Caroline Mugo said he had no premeditated intention. The court said the prosecution had not presented anything to show that DJ Brownskin played a role in aiding Sharon Jerry Mwangi to commit suicide. That story is augmented for you on page 12. Let's take a look at the expert opinion, how AI has handed Gen Z the keys to political power. These are sentiments by Nelson Amenya. Gen Z can spot inauthenticity instantly while also producing content that resonates genuinely with their peers. The story is augmented for you on page 15. Also on page 15 this morning, Johnson Muthama sentiment, let's reject leaders who beat tribal drums. And I quote him, Kenya's democracy will not be strengthened by political boundaries drawing along tribal lines. Now, on the DN2, the Voice article today, Kenya's next president is the big question. Now, following her 2022 disqualification, Esther Waringa is returning to the presidential race in 2027. The independent candidate unpacks her manifesto, a bold plan prioritizing anti-graft war, VAT reduction to 7%, declaring GBV a national emergency, and enforcing the two-thirds gender rule within her first 100 days. That story is augmented for you on page 4 and page 5 of the DN2, The Voice article. Right. Let's move on and take a look at county news. We start with Nairobi. Gikomba is public land, says Ruto amid claims of hidden hands behind fires. A long-running dispute over the ownership of prime land hosting Nairobi's Gikomba market, East Africa's largest open-air market, is expected to be resolved following intervention by the national government. Speaking at a meeting in State House this week, attended by market leaders and Nairobi County Assembly MCAs from the Trade Committee, President William Ruto declared that Gikomba is public land owned by the government. Now, also this morning, senators control fears in counties, delaying rollout of municipalities. Now, funding pressures and clear revenue frameworks cited as obstacles to municipal autonomy. Most of the 47 devolved units are yet to fully operationalize municipalities, bridging constitutional and legal requirements on urban governance. That story is augmented for you on page 19. And on page 20, we go straight to Lamu. Now, Lamu or Mombasa, coast leaders split over Turkana oil export hub. Gulf Energy has acquired Talos assets, sparkling debate on pipeline versus refinery transport. Debate has intensified over whether Mombasa or Lamu will handle Turkana crude. That story is augmented for you on page 20. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at the international scene on page 21. NATO chief, let allies step up Arctic security. Most close aides were not happy with the idea of military force. President Trump's retreat on Greenland caps weeks of policy chaos. Now, that is on page 21 for you this morning. Briefly, in Kampala, Uganda, Museveni praises Uganda-China ties. Now, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni said on Wednesday that relations with China have continued to strengthen in recent years that Beijing's zero-tariff policy for African countries would boost Kampala's exports to the world's second-largest economy. In Juba, South Sudan denies rebel takeover of a strategic town. South Sudan has denied claims of rebels capturing the town of Panyume, central Equatoria State, which borders Uganda and the DR Congo. Morobo County Commissioner Charles Data Bullen said the town, which is about 138 kilometers from Juba, is under the control of the South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSPDF, following a battle with Sudan People's Liberation Army in opposition, SPLA-IO forces on Tuesday. And with that, let's take a look at business news. We start with the energy sector. Kenya Power 6 COG help in 2.4 billion shillings bills roll. Now, electricity distributor asks council to intervene over bitter feuds in 10 counties. The debt roll stands at 3.9 billion shillings, and that is what counties owe Kenya Power according to utilities records. Now, let's take a look at the world of sports. We start with obituary. Abey Nasur, Uganda Cranes great and Gor Mahia legend. Ex-East African football star passed on in Kampala on January 13th, aged 74. A 1978 AFCON finalist, the ex-winger won numerous league and Sekafa titles with Kogalo. That story is augmented for you on page 30. Let's take a look at page 31, new chapter. Why CAF ended 17-year-old Chan. Competition has been scrapped because of many challenges, including funding constraints, team withdrawals, and little interest. The biennial event will be replaced by African Nations League, Mosepe said. And lastly, on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning is Kibugu, Kenya's foremost pro. This is all about golfing. Talented youngster is the highest ranked East African player in the world. Freshly minted Sunshine Development Tour champion dreams of one day playing in the PGA Tour. With his brilliant performance in the inaugural Sunshine Development Tour East Africa Swing, which has landed him in the main Sunshine Tour in South Africa, Kenya's young Njoroge Kibigu is certainly the pro golfer to watch in Africa. Besides topping the Sunshine Development Tour East Africa Swing, Kibugu is also ranked 4th in the PGK Equator Tour order of merit behind Dismas Indiza, Samuel Njoroge Chege, and the tour leader Greg Snow. The story is what brings us to the end of the morning momentum this 23rd day of January 2026. Thank you so much for keeping us company. My name is Alphonce Ouma, and this has been the morning momentum. See you next week, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful weekend ahead of you. Bye-bye for now.
Younib TV, faith, inspiration, unity.